Today's lesson will cover Unit 1, Key Issue 4. Why are some actions not sustainable? We're going to be looking at 4.1 and 4.2 in the first part of this lesson. 4.1 will go over geography, sustainability, and resources. 4.2 will go over sustainability and Earth's physical systems. The key here is sustainability, and this is a concept that you will see reemerge in every unit that we cover this semester. The term sustainability means that we as humans are responsible with our resource consumption. First, let's break down a resource. A resource is a substance from the environment that people access and use. Food, water, minerals, soil, plants, and animals are all examples of resources. We can divide resources into two categories: renewable resources and non-renewable resources. Renewable resources are produced in nature more rapidly than are consumed by humans. Some examples of renewable resources include air, water, and soil. Non-renewable resources, on the other hand, are produced in nature more slowly than are consumed by humans. Some examples of non-renewable resources include petroleum, natural gas, and coal. Some people make a conscious effort to minimize the amount of non-renewable resources they consume. When humans deplete non-renewable resources like petroleum, gas, and coal, they end up destroying renewable resources in the process. Some countries in the world are doing a better job than others in trying to achieve sustainability. The United Nations has been making efforts to try to get the international community to become more sustainable. In 2015, the United Nations released 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And they're hoping to make considerable progress on these goals by the year 2030. Making sustainability a priority is essential in ensuring that resources are available in the future. It's important to note that sustainability is not solely about the environment. It's also about society and the economy. We call these three things the three pillars of sustainability. Let's break each of these pillars down. First, let's take on the environment. When we're considering the environment, two things come to mind: conservation and preservation. Conservation is maintaining resources with as little human impact as possible. This does not mean that resources aren't being used. It just means that they're being used for necessity in as little a threatening way to the environment as possible. Preservation, on the other hand, is different. Preservation assumes that the natural resource is not for human consumption, and it should not be extracted, but rather preserved. An example of conservation would be minimizing your water consumption and your energy consumption. An example of preservation would be the protection of wildlife on an area of land or national parks. Now let's take on the society pillar. Humans need shelter, food, and clothing to survive. But often we see humans use so many resources that go well beyond their needs. The hope of a society trying to achieve sustainability would be having citizens that support sustainability, that embrace it, that regard it as a value. Consumers, for example, have a lot of power in dictating sustainability. And society's values are the basis for choosing which resources to use. The last pillar is the economy pillar, and resources are attached to a monetary value. Consumers pay a lot more for resources they desire and a lot less for resources they don't. Surprisingly, geographers have observed that some goods don't reflect the actual environmental costs. An example of this would be commuting to work in your car and sitting in traffic for an hour. The consumption of gas to sit in traffic for this long might be the only thing the consumer considers. However, when we think of the high level of pollution that their vehicles might be emitting into the atmosphere, That in the long run will cost a lot more. When all of these pillars meet, we see that there's overlap, and we understand that not one can be achieved without considering the other. For example, the social and economic pillar need to be balanced so they can create equity among people. Equity means fairness. When we look at the balance between the economy and the environment, we want to make sure that that remains viable, meaning that if there are economic benefits, that it doesn't come at too high an environmental risk, that it ends up being an economic detriment in the long run. And then, of course, balancing the environment with society, making sure that that's bearable. What that means is humans need to utilize resources, and in turn, there is going to be some risk that's placed against the environment. So we want to be able to preserve what we can or conserve what we can when it comes to the environment, while still being able to utilize the resources we need to survive. Hence, bearable. When all of these pillars meet, some level of sacrifice may be necessary to achieve sustainability. Let's apply the 3 pillars of sustainability to the images on this slide. Take a look at A, B, and C. These are figures 1-45 and 1-46 that you can find on page 33 of your textbook. These images are from the Troodos Mountains in Cyprus. Each photograph demonstrates a commitment to each pillar of sustainability. Let's take a look at photo A. Photo A represents the environment pillar. The area is known for its outstanding rock formations. Much of the area is protected as national forests and UN World Heritage Sites. B represents the social equity pillar. Local residents watch tourists pass by. And lastly, photo C represents the economy pillar. Tourism is a major economic activity. Some of the money generated by relatively wealthy tourists help make life more comfortable for residents living in a rugged environment. Even though this land could have been used in a number of different ways that may have presented economic benefits to the society, preserving it actually had the consequence of tourists wanting to see it, and in turn created more economic benefits that ended up benefiting society anyway. The United Nations considers sustainability as the intersection of environmental, social, and economic sustainability. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, also known as UNESCO, has identified 878 World Heritage Sites that it seeks to preserve. Check out the specific Sustainable Development Goals put out by the United Nations. These are the goals I was talking about earlier, the ones in which the United Nations is trying to make considerable gains on by 2030. After this lesson, you will have the opportunity to look at some of these goals, assess them, and prioritize the ones that you think are most vital or most important. Section 4.2 is much more technical. It's going to cover sustainability and Earth's physical systems. Natural resources are part of 4 interrelated systems. 3 of them are abiotic, and 1 of them is biotic. The Earth's physical systems influence human activity. There are 3 abiotic non-living systems: the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, and the lithosphere, and 1 biotic system, the biosphere. The atmosphere is a thin layer of gases surrounding Earth. The hydrosphere is all of the water on and near Earth's surface. The lithosphere is Earth's crust and a portion of the upper mantle directly below the crust. The biotic system, the biosphere, includes all living organisms on Earth, including plants and animals, as well as microorganisms. Variations in air pressure in the atmosphere is what contributes to weather conditions in specific locations. These weather conditions are also known as climate. Take a look at this map of climate regions in figure 1-47, located on page 34 of your textbook. The colors in the key are associated with the different climates. Climate is the long-term average weather condition in a particular location. Geographers classify climates according to the system developed by German climatologist Vladimir Köppen. This system divides the world into 5 main climate regions that are identified by the letters A through E as well as by names. A, you'll find your humid low-latitude climates. B is where you'll find your dry climates. C, warm mid-latitude climates. D, cold mid-latitude climates. And E, polar climates. Different climates present different challenges and opportunities for human habitation. Humans have little tolerance for extreme temperature and precipitation levels, so they avoid living in places that are too hot, too cold, too wet, or too dry. Take some time to look at the climate regions. Where would you guess the fewest people would live? If you guessed region B, the dry climates, and region E, the polar climates, you're correct. This is the end of Unit 1, Key Issue 4, Part 1. Please refer to Google Classroom and check out the 17 Sustainable Development Goals put out by the United Nations. We're going to spend some time looking at these goals, assessing them, and discussing their relevance and which ones are most important.